So I would love to welcome our guest today, Lisa Berry, who's the Senior Divisional Merchandiser for men's apparel and accessories at Target. With over 19 years of corporate retail experience, Lisa Berry has shattered the professional stigmas by leading teams with true authenticity. She believes that growth is achieved by inspiration, empowerment, and fundamental support that truly motivates and amplifies individual greatness. Her empathetic approach to leadership is based on being kind, being open-minded, being inspired, being comfortable with change, and showing up as your authentic self. Lisa has incredibly well-rounded experience in various guest-centric brands and leading teams with astonishing results. From leading domestic merchandise growth strategies to executing and operating international launches, Lisa has built her foundation on a background of merchandising planning, demand forecasting, merchandising, and buying. She has held executive positions at some of the most recognized Fortune 500 retailers in the U.S. At Victoria's Secret, she was responsible for launching the first full assortment flagship stores in London, Dubai, Kuwait, and Canada as the head merchant for VS International. At Ascena Brands, she created and executed the international growth strategy for Justice, with success expanding their footprint overseas. As the SVP of retail at Samsonite Europe, she created the strategy to evolve the European and African markets from wholesale to retail. Lisa is the Senior Divisional of Merchandising of men's apparel and accessories at Target Corporation in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and she's a graduate of FIT, class of 2004. Thank you for being here.
Yes. Being here. I mean, I think you're well described. I know it wasn't necessarily written by you, but as being an empathetic leader, I think we could all sense that even as you just entered the room.
Thanks.
So. Thank you. I would just love you to start at the beginning of your career path and kind of what brought you from FIT graduate to today.
So I'm a loud talker, so if this is too loud, you guys just let me know. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so humbled for this opportunity. I think it's super cool to come back and share my pearls of wisdom. So graduated in 2004, fashion merchandising. And for sure at that time in my life, I'm I'm gonna be this, then this, then this. So I had this whole roadmap laid out. And I'm going to tell you here right now, it's kind of a plot twist on how things unfold, but it's definitely a journey. Started my career here in the city. I was working at a jewelry company, buying precious jewelry to put in those department stored cases. So think Dillard's, Filene's, those precious gem jewelry that could be hideous, could be not. And then my career took me down to Fort Myers, Florida, working for Chico's. Really interesting time in that space because they were very niche in that market, so it was exciting, but quickly realized I wanted more in terms of career growth and just the vibe of the company. And then my career took me to Columbus, Ohio, which is kind of like a retail hub of the Midwest, and there I worked for L Brands, which is the parent company of Victoria's Secret. And while at Victoria's Secret, it was kind of cool. Looking back, it's cool. At the time, I was like, oh my God, this is annoying. But Victoria's Secret's approach to merchandising and leadership was work the round table, work different functions and roles, which will make you a better merch leader and kind of build that empathy and acumen for your planners, product development, blah, blah, blah. So at Victoria's Secret, I held those core retail functional roles: merch planning, demand forecasting, allocation, product development, and then ultimately had the really cool opportunity to lead the execution and rollout of Victoria's Secret International. So at the time, it was a scrappy and small team, and I was able to kind of build that out. And essentially, what is that customer experience outside the US? So mentioned in my bio, Dubai, Kuwait, London, Shanghai, and Canada, and it was exhilarating and exhausting. In Columbus, Ohio, there's Ascena Brands, which is a parent company for Justice, Lane Bryant, Maurice's, Dress Barn, and Taylor. And they were we want to take this brand, Justice, or Limited 2, depends on how old you are. We want to take it international, but we don't really know how or what methodology we want to do this. And they had a couple of international stores at the time, but they're we need to legitimize this. So got to kind of build that strategy and then execute the strategy of taking that brand internationally through franchise partnerships and negotiations. It was a blast and kind of led the international expansion of Justice. And then this is where like you're gonna have forks in the road throughout your life and career, and this was like a big fork, and it was like an opportunity kind of presented itself to be like, the CEO of Samsonite was like, we just acquired Tumi, the luggage brand, and Samsonite by definition is a wholesale company, but we really want to evolve it from wholesale to retail, and we kind of need some help. I'm like, say more. And the opportunity presented itself to start structuring that evolution from wholesale to retail and create those like core functions that we know in retailers today, like merch planning, merchandising, store design, construction, all that good stuff. And they wanted to do the European market first. So I was like, okay. And I flew home to my husband in Columbus, Ohio, and we have a dog, Barnacle. And I'm like, how do you feel about moving to Europe? And while we're there, I'm going to be the vice president of merchandise planning, blah, 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 for Samsonite and Tumi Europe, Africa, and then influencing of Russia. And thankfully, we were like, let's do this, buckle up, YOLO. I don't even know if we say that anymore. So we moved to Belgium, and that's where Samsonite European's headquarters were, or are, and Tumi's in Paris, and we had design in Milan. So we lived, and we worked in Europe for 2.5 years.
Wow.
And the role that I left was senior vice president of retail, and it was the time of my life, the hardest job I've ever had. And then, you know, things came to an end, and we found ourselves like, okay, we need to come back stateside, moved to New Jersey, and then COVID happened, where it was like, what? And then during that time, Target reached out. So took the call, as that's a nugget of information. You guys always take the call if someone is reaching out to understand what you want to do. And immediately I'm like, this is a vibe I really want to be a part of, a culture I'm really excited about. So was able to start at Target in September of 2020.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy time to start a new job.
Crazy. Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
Honestly, it was really hard. So if you think about, I mean, for humans in general, that was like a hardest moment in everyone's lives. And then from a career standpoint, you get into your groove of how you lead teams. You get into your groove on how you collaborate with other team members and get things done. And it was always in person because there was no other way. So with COVID, you know, it shut down, everything was virtual. And then starting such a large corporation virtually as a leader of a team that the team has known each other for 20 years, it was like a, I guess like imposter syndrome kind of crept in. I'm like, I got to figure out how to build rapport, you know, collaborate, build trust within my team virtually. And I'm like, I know how to be my best self in person, but virtual is hard.
Yeah.
But
how long were you virtual after you started?
Oh, geez. It was
September.
September 2020, and I didn't actually get to meet a person in real life that I worked with until June of 2021.
Wow.
Wasn't that insane?
Yeah.
So you're spending hours with these people on Zoomy, and then finally the world started opening up. People felt more comfortable, and they're like, let's meet, let's go for a walk. And then I didn't get to see my office until October of 2021.
Wow.
And that's when I actually got emotional because I'm like, I work at Target.
Yeah.
Like this feels real now.
Yeah.
So it was hard, but thankfully you kind of, I'm an incredible vulnerable person, and I know sometimes that's uncomfortable for people, but I like raised my hand immediately. I'm like, yo, how do you do this? What are you, like, how do I build rapport with my team? How do I build trust when like, I'm just a person on the screen.
Yeah.
So thankfully, I have like a good
luckily,
network.
no one knew how to do that.
No,
so
yeah, they were like, join the club.
Ourselves. Yeah.
And that actually was really great because
Yeah.
it just, everyone was on the same line. Of,
Yeah.
we're just sharing how to build that connection and also like mental health. Like how do we, as the world was shut down and then societal events were happening, how do we show up for our team that feels authentic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, crazy times.
Crazy times. I'm so sick of saying unprecedented.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously. Now, this is not a planned question, but since you have it in your background, I feel like it's not something we're touching on throughout the course. And I'm wondering if you could describe what a merchandise planner
Yes.
does.
Okay.
And, what they are.
So here's what's up. If you would have told me when I was at FIT that I would do a merch planning job, I'd be like, disgusting. Retail math was a thing. I understood that I had to do it. But I absolutely loved merchandise planning. And merchandise planning, at least in the context in which I was a merch planner, they kind of give you, as a merchant, the guardrails in which you can spend on an assortment. So, for example, you have your sales plan that you need to achieve. As a merchant, you get to curate the assortment to deliver that sales plan, but you can't go willy-nilly. They're like, okay, to achieve this sales plan, you're allowed to buy this much assortment. This is the sell-through that we're aiming for. This is the margin that we need to make. So creating those guardrails for my merchant was actually really fun. It's obviously very analytical. It's math, but it's math that I could hang with, and I actually really enjoyed that job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's honestly like that willingness to be open-minded about where your career takes you. Because if it wasn't for that merch planning position, I don't think I would be as successful as I am as a divisional right now. Because you understand, okay, we need to make margin. I need to have a better sell-through. My inventory investment is way too high considering my sales plan. So it just makes that conversation easier with my planning partner.
Yeah.
Because I get
sense.
it.
Yeah. I think the thing that to remember too is that retail math seems intimidating, but it's about 5 formulas.
Dude,
so
yes.
Once you know those 5 formulas,
And
it's actually
there's
not.
tools that calculate.
Excel can do it all for you.
Right, which plot twist, when I was a student, we would have to do open to buys like pen and paper.
Oh my gosh.
Archaic.
Yeah.
Yes. We're now you have Excel. It was terrifying.
There are a couple people out there who still do that.
This is true. Let me fax you my order.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is very true.
Or hand it to you when I leave the office.
Yes, but no, it sounds intimidating, and I get it, but at the time, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Sorry, I went to my
Yeah. So you have spent both time in accessories and intimates in the past, and now men's.
Yeah.
What do you prefer and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. So honestly, I've done jewelry, intimates, apparel, hard lines with suitcases.
Wow.
I enjoy all of it. I think you kind of have your bias on what you want to do. It was all about women's wear for me. I'm a woman. I loved clothing, dresses, and then you kind of get into it and you become obsessed with that particular category and that guest. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really kind of necessary for you to be a successful merchant, in my opinion. You become guest obsessed and then just kind of start living it.
Yeah.
Looking, you have to be resourceful, start following accounts that is in menswear, start just reading publications. And there's consistent themes regardless, because there's such macro trends. And the key differences, I think, are really just seasonality, how frequent people are purchasing certain items. But I've loved every experience, honestly. You learn so freaking much.
Yeah.
And you take from you, never in a million years would a conversation at Victoria's Secret be applicable in menswear, which I thought. But no, plot twist, I'm in charge of the Hanes and the Fruit of the Looms of the world, and it's panties.
Yeah.
There's
same story.
Same
Yeah.
story. We need them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It carries over. at
Something,
least.
yes.
Yeah.
There's always, you build your toolbox of learnings, and it always carries over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Going back to your time at FIT, is there any pearls of wisdom that you can share from your time here
Oh my
that
God.
you think people should take advantage of?
Maximize everything that the school offers you. So, the resources that are probably way more now than when I was a student, take advantage of those. Take advantage of the networks. Take advantage of any events. Just be that ultimate student. And I think I had such anxiety my junior and senior year, oh my God, I leave and I have to find a job? Like, what is this? But y'all will be okay. It will work out. Truly. It may not work out to what you have in your mind, but challenge what you have in your minds and just be open. And it's also like, use your community, use your network. It's very much, this industry is very small. And so don't be a turd. And you're going to have your network and you're going to know people and you just are going to build this community and rely on your community.
Yeah.
I think it's just like, you will be fine.
Yeah.
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 That's great. So if you could describe what a role looks like as an assistant buyer on your team or an entry-level job on your team.
Sure. So an assistant, so two things. Entry level, especially if you're looking into merchandising, it may not be assistant buyer. You could be an inventory analyst or a business analyst. It's all about getting your foot in the door, in my opinion, and that's where you need to be kind of a little open-minded. Because if you wait for that perfect job, it may be a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to describe an assistant buyer role specifically on my team. The way my team is set up is by category. So I have tops, bottoms, denim, basics, accessories, seasonal. And the assistant buyers really support the leader of that business unit or that category. And it could be anything from the non-slick stuff of data entry, items set up in the systems to make sure everything talks to each other, from manufacturing overseas to allocation once it hits our distribution centers, to even analyzing sales data. So every Monday, pull reports, what's hot, what's not, what's a dog, what do we need to buy into. So it's supporting the BU in that way. And also just, I always encourage...
BU being buying unit?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Or business unit.
Business unit, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Target is acronym heavy, so let me know if I'm going all acronyms on you. So the assistant buyer supports that business unit and supports the buyer, senior buyer. And then essentially, like, I empower, regardless of level, share a strategy, share what you're seeing in market, like, become obsessed with us. You don't have to be a certain level to say something. So yeah, it's a lot of entry and item setup for success, reading and reacting. And also at the same time, Target is such a ginormous company that you have merchandising and then you have all these offshoots of ecosystem. So they help corral and communicate with everyone across what we call the round table. So we're like activating merch strategies at all levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so then you go from assistant buyer to associate typically? Or?
So in my particular division, to buyer.
To buyer, okay.
Yep. And then senior buyer.
Got
and
it.
then there's director.
Okay.
However, my little nugget is that be open. So like you can go from assistant buyer to associate planner, and then maybe from associate planner to a small format buyer. So you can like bop around, and essentially the approach I think you should take is, what will build my toolbox to be a better, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Back that up, and like, what do you need in your toolbox? Because I do a lot of mentoring at Target, and I get it, because I was the same way. I want an assistant buyer, I want to be buyer. Okay, cool. But there's other next level positions that will get you even a different experience, but you can come back as a better buyer or senior buyer.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on how companies are structured, but Target's very large, where you can kind of wiggle your way through.
Yeah.
And just gain cool experience and build out that toolbox.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And how about your role, your current role?
Oh, I love it. I'm upset. My team is incredible, and I think it's an honor to lead such a strong division. And men's apparel and accessories is very interesting, especially right now. We're in this macro environment, and if you talk to any economist, they're like, it's a recession. Okay, calm down. Like, it might not be that bad. And men's is impacted greatly because we're a discretionary income division, and we're fine. And I think one of the proudest moments that we've just done is we have two really great owned brands within Target's portfolio of men's, Goodfellow and Original Use, and that's designed and created by Target. And it's doing an incredible job. We just did a relaunch. So yeah, it's a fun time at Target.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. What does a typical week look like for you?
Oh my God, meetings. No.
Yeah.
So kind of like
You say you had 20 people on your team?
Yeah, 20.
Yeah,
like
so a lot of people to meet with.
Well, that, and then, so you have I have 20 direct into me, and then the round table is a couple hundred people. And the way Target approaches merchandising is that I'm essentially the CEO of men's apparel and accessories. So what that means is I create the merch strategy, we develop the assortment to achieve these sales plans, but then I have to work with marketing, allocation. We have PPCOE, which is Pricing Promotion Center of Excellence. We have all these other leaders that I need to make sure that I am connecting with, and they understand our strategy, they're executing to our strategy. So it's a lot of meetings just working across what happened, like the past, present, what's selling now, and future. So for example, we're working on 2024 assortment, why we're reading 2023. So everything is kind of tripled on timelines. Team is everything, so I'm big about developing and just kind of making sure they feel empowered to make decisions as leaders of their own business unit. Mentoring, but yeah, lots of meetings.
Yeah.
And, Target has a really great approach to work in terms of it's hybrid, it's flex for your day, so no mandating in office, but try to get into the offices and just touch and feel and see the product and the assortment that we're bringing to the guest. So that's exciting too.
But no mandated certain days of the week or anything like that?
No, we kind of, as a division, we're like, okay, Tuesday could be our in-office days for the ones that are living in the Minneapolis area. And I have team members that are fully remote, living in California and Florida and Wisconsin. And they will fly in for big moments where we're kind of doing a design review for any of our cycles. And Tuesday, and the reason why we specified a day is because people would come into the office and they're like, there ain't nobody here.
Yeah.
It's quiet. So I'm like, okay, if you guys can, let's try to make Tuesday our day. And then we can collaborate. We'll have our in-person meetings. And it's been really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I love
great.
it.
That's a lot more flexible than most places.
Yes, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
So
it's working okay.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
fine. So
Yeah.
it's like flex for your day. You might take a meeting in the morning, drive into the office, and you'll be like, I'm done, and then peace out and drive back home and take the rest of your meetings from home. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is great. It's awesome.
I'm gonna have some water because you guys don't need to hear my pace.
I'm making you talk a lot.
No, you're
What are some of the biggest trends that are happening in your space right now in men's and men's apparel and men's accessories?
So I was just telling her how I was supposed to be in Paris and Copenhagen to kind of shop Europe market because that's where you get some inspiration on the trends. But I think what we're seeing right now in men specifically, first color. Right now you see a lot of neutrals, but some cool rusty earth tones, pops of color. And that's something that I'm working on with my team. Let's not keep giving him that dusty old pink color. Let's get him something new, make it pop on the floor pad. In terms of fabrication, lots of linen and woven, and even some terry, which has been really interesting. I think White Lotus had something to do with it, but we'll see. And then in terms of silhouette, we're really seeing, we call it proportion play. So that oversized top and oversized bottom, joggers in terms of pants, cargo, which cargo will always be a thing for men, but it's becoming more prevalent.
Trendy. Yeah.
More trend. And then we see a lot of layering, which I think is an opportunity, cardigans or hoodies, and I think it's gotten more funky for the male guest, where they're playing a little bit with different fabrications, different color. But men's trends are not as fast as women's, but they're kind of cool to watch because then you see the adoption of trends. So, for example, I was in Europe last October. We did Paris, London, and Antwerp. And what we saw there, I'm like, okay, it's slowly being adopted by the target guest. So they may not be on the front end of the trend curve, but they're getting to it.
6 months behind.
Yeah, yeah.
How often do you travel like that?
We try to do. We try to do LA and New York probably once a quarter, and then big like Europe or Asia trips once or twice a year.
Yeah.
So for men specifically, we see the most exciting in terms of like evolution of trend for fall. And then the design team actually went over to Australia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, during their reverse seasonality and came back with like some really cool summer
Ideas.
inspiration. Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's great. So actually, while we're on the topic of world travel, you've worked in a couple of key cities. You mentioned Fort Myers. What city in Belgium?
It's called, we lived outside Ghent.
Oh, okay.
But their offices were in Oudenaarde. That's not the proper pronunciation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Working in Europe, working
Yeah.
in Columbus, working
Columbus.
in Minneapolis, and New York.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could touch on a little bit of like the personalities of these cities
Ooh.
and what it was like working in each place.
Okay, so
obviously all pre-COVID except
Yes.
for Minneapolis, but
This is also the thing back in my FIT days. I'm like, I will never leave New York. Okay, sit down. No, New York will always have this energy that I gravitate to. It's buzzing and I love it, but also I got to the point where this is exhausting. Cost of living's ridiculous. Yeah, you guys, I mean, I don't need to tell you guys. And then Fort Myers, Florida, it had its perks in terms of weather, but I moved down there in my early 20s, and it's like you go from New York City, like you could do whatever you want, go to a bar, whatever, to Fort Myers, Florida, where it's like the bars are in like strip malls.
Yeah.
Okay. Harder to make friends, obviously, but the weather was amazing. Columbus, Ohio was really fun. I think it was a great city in terms of had a cool downtown vibe, huge arts district, which was exciting. And then of course, like you had these huge fashion retailers. So you have all of L Brand's portfolio, Abercrombie, DSW, Big Lots, like Lane Bryant, like all these huge brands are in Columbus, Ohio. So for as Midwest as it is, it kind of is a little fashion place.
yeah.
Europe was,
Sorry, where are you from?
I'm originally from Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Do you hear the accent?
Yes, I was like, she was here from, I just wanted to know, like, where you, okay.
Yeah, it's the nasal. Yeah.
No. You said y'all, and I was like, uh-oh. I was like,
My husband's from Tennessee, so that's maybe where you get the y'all. No, you're fine. Belgium was cool. So Europe is a different totally mindset. Belgians were, it was funny because, I don't want to say Belgians are cold, but they're not so like American, like, hey, how are you? I'm Lisa Barrett. So like I have like a natural energy about me, and I found myself having to like kind of contain it and pump the brakes because Belgians were like, clutch my pearls, like who is this wild woman? But they absolutely embraced my husband and I, and we felt very welcomed. And Europeans are so cool, and they're so progressed in certain ways, and it was just like a cool experience. It was hard to leave. Minneapolis, kind of like Columbus, Ohio vibes. You got Target there, you got Best Buys there, 3M, like these big corporations. But moving into Minneapolis during the time of COVID, where things were shut down, post George Floyd murder, like that city has gone through a lot.
Yeah.
So I
you
think
moved like right after that.
right after that.
Yeah.
So they're building up back into it. Things are opening up, and a lot of like really great conversations are happening in terms of like the community and how do we support. So yeah, I don't have a favorite. New York will always have a place in my heart. And when I come back, I'm like, oh, I want to move back. But then I'm like, nope, I love what I have in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like you get to come back and forth.
Yeah,
A decent
I get
amount.
my fix.
Yeah. But do you come just for shopping, or do you have an office here that you?
We do have offices here, but the offices here are more for our marketing and communications and PR and stuff. We come here for shopping. We also do vendor meetings. We have Levi's partnerships. They have offices here.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
try to
That's great.
maximize.
That's awesome. Let's see. I already asked you about what an entry-level job looks like in your current team, but I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you could say what your number one piece of advice would be for someone who's looking for a job to get in there and how they can make themselves stand out.
Yes. How to make yourself stand up. First and foremost, get a LinkedIn profile. Like, connect, get involved with like other things within the community that like speaks to you and is passionate. And I'm kind of going through like what I looked for like new hires.
Yeah.
So get that boosted. I think any way that you can get active in, whether it's your community or things that you're passionate about, do that. Like, I know people see it as like extra credit, but to me it's like, you gotta have passion outside of what you do in your career. And I think a theme that I've been saying is just being really open to what the journey looks like. So if you see a company and you're like, I swear a lot, so I'm like, every time I pause, I'm like, don't say that. You're like, oh my God, this company's ethos, this vibe, this is what I represent, this is what I want to work for. And just, hustle. Like,
That comes across that you
Yes.
feel so passionately about that.
yes, and like kind of be like, okay, I want to work here. I would love to start my career here. And like submit your resume, maybe email some people, connect with people on LinkedIn, kind of put yourself out there. Like, don't be bashful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Like, own it.
Good advice.
Yeah.
FBM now has, she's a graduate of FBM. I think there's a couple of you in the room that are in it. There's now a first year experience class where part of it is making sure your LinkedIn profile is
Yes.
ready to go.
They have a class at Target called Brand You. It's that. So, I encourage, like, make it a reflection of who you are. Because with your first job, it is that intimidating, like, you have no experience aside from like you're a student, whatever you've done, throughout your high school or college days in terms of like jobs. But it's like, okay, what makes you stand out? Like, what is something that's your superpower? And then how do you like, I don't want to say pimp it, but like, how do you like show it off? Like, how do you get that out there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Did you work anywhere while you were at FIT?
Yes, I worked at Express in the Flatiron District, and then I was an RA in the dorms, and that's all I could handle.
Yeah.
I'm done.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like that experience of working in a retail shop is always
Yes.
a good way to kind of
It
kick
really
off.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. I wonder if you could share with us any time that you feel like you failed at something really badly in your
Oof,
career
yeah.
and how you pivoted and learned from it.
It's hard for me to say failure because, I mean, what does that mean essentially, right? Like, here's the thing, we will fail. We're human. Things happen. So it's almost like getting comfortable with like, yep, you could F up or something could fail without even you being involved in, and it impacts you. And I've made a trillion mistakes throughout my career. Like, my favorite one that I just told my team, I accidentally allocated like 400 weeks of supply of bras at Victoria's Secret, and I was like, wow. So immediately I just was like, I went into my boss's office. I'm like, hey, you're probably gonna fire me, but I just wanted to let you know that I did this. And they're like, oh, thanks for letting me know. Let's go fix it. Okay. So I think everyone knows, like, you're gonna make freaking dumb mistakes, but you just have to own it and be brave and courageous and be like, I did that. Can you help me? And let's understand why I made that mistake. Because we're all human. And then the one that's kind of recent, when I was telling you about my time at Samsonite Europe, the leadership team at that time was incredibly supportive of evolving this company. Plot twist, a board seat changed. The CEO got let go, new guy comes in, and then a new president of Europe came in. So it was a whole leadership change overnight, who were not supporters of this wholesale to retail evolution, and I lost my job. And that was the first time in my career that has happened. And I was a mess. I was like, what is my identity? I can't believe, this, I got let go. And it wasn't something that I did wrong. It was just like, yep, your expertise is not needed anymore. And I think, first of all, it happens all the time. This won't be the first time that it happens to me probably, because I probably have another 40 years of work.
Last time, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's how do you pick yourself up and dust yourself off after that is incredibly important. And I think, number one, the job doesn't define you. You have to kind of build this resiliency regardless of what happens, and you're going to be fine. You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So that was a failure, I guess, where it shattered. It was like night and day. I came into the office, they're like, you have an option to stay, or we can give you this package. I'm like, what are you talking about? So yeah, it was scary, and it is scary, but you will be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All's well that ends well.
Totally. And it sounds so cliche in the moment where like my husband's like, another one door closes, another one opens. Everything happens for a reason. I'm like, oh my God, have a cup of shut up. But he was right. And even though I wasn't listening in the moment, looking back, I'm like, there's these phrases for a reason.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in the moment, you're like, oh my God, scorched earth, but everything was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was one of your greatest successes in your career so
Ooh.
far? A happier story.
So I'm a big person that celebrates small wins. I'm like a nauseously optimistic person. So I consider myself like a Care Bear. So every small win I kind of put in my bank, because sometimes things are tough. And I'm like, let's go to the bank real quick and talk about any small wins the team and I have had. This is a success to me, being able to come back and just chit chat with you all. But one that I'm really proud of is that moment that we went over to Europe and I worked on a big project, and it wasn't successful in the traditional sense, but it was successful in my husband and I personally and professionally adapted and worked abroad and lived abroad, and it was a blast, and I learned a lot, and we were open-minded about all these adventures.
Yeah.
So that was a big success that I'm proud of.
And a once-in-a-lifetime experience
Totally.
that you can't always do. Life doesn't always allow.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
100%.
That's great. Do you feel like there was anything that you wish you'd done differently while you were at FIT to have prepared you for the path you landed on?
Oh, gosh. It's like no regrets. Honestly, I think I wish I was more open-minded beginning of my career. So like I said, when I was at FIT, never in a million years would I say I would live outside New York City. I could never. Okay, I realized quickly there's opportunities all over, whether it's fashion or retail or anything guest-centric. So I wish I was more open-minded then. Would my career path been different? Maybe. But I think just having that open-mindedness would have allowed me to be less rigid in what I thought I wanted to what I probably needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. You mentioned at the outset that you have mentored a lot of people through
I love mentoring.
Target.
Yes.
Is there a formal mentoring process there? And was that
That's a good question.
Yeah.
There's tons of formal mentoring at Target, but I kind of I don't want to say collect, but I meet young professionals all the time, and they're like, can you mentor me? I'm like, yes, but it's also they're mentoring me as well. It's definitely a two-way street. So I have my formal mentorship duties, and then I have my random ad hoc ones.
Yeah.
And it gives me life because I'm learning, and I'm kind of sharing just my personal journey and advice, and I think it helps build your community, which you absolutely need because you lean on each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are they teaching you?
Ooh, that's good. Well, kind of at the beginning where in the bio, and my career coach wrote my bio, because I'm like, how do you write about yourself? Authentic leadership is becoming a thing now, which is great. And it is kind of a buzzword, but every day when I meet with anyone that I'm quote unquote mentoring, it shows that I need to be even more vulnerable and authentic to get the best conversation and version of this team member, and it's just this like energy exchange. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So it's a reminder of like, be yourself. You show up in a certain way, and that's your way, like own it.
Yeah.
It kind of just reconfirms like, this is what this individual needs to see, because I want that individual to show up their way and their self.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to model the behaviors that you are preaching.
That's great.
Yeah.
Have you had any good mentors yourself
Yes.
over the years?
Yes.
Yeah.
Something I probably should have started earlier, so start now, party people. Like, if there's professors or people in the industry that you've met and you're like, you know what, I want to stay in contact with this person, do it, reach out. I have 4 mentors outside Target, and it's good to have like a little random selection. The ones outside Target give you just life advice, professional advice, and you build this relationship over time so you get more real. As you evolve as a person, they evolve with you, and they give you the best advice. And then, of course, in Target, you have your mentors who've helped me navigate that culture. Starting new in COVID, I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
These individuals kind of took me aside. You're like, here's the life hack. Got it. Here's how we navigate certain situations. Here's, the culture handbook of Target, if you will. It's been helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And what do you feel like are some successful training tools that you've developed to kind of groom your team?
Not so much training tools, but more like development tools. So, I'm a big proponent of an IDP, like an individual development plan. And it's essentially this living document of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? How do you want to get there? Who are your supporters? What are your toolbox? So it's just creating this source of truth for that team member as an individual that they need to update and evolve as they evolve. So creating development tools have been really fun. I'm a Virgo, which means I love templates and organization. So I've you create templates to help your team, either put a strategy or a buy in place. I think I get joy out of it, which sounds sick, but like, give me an Excel workbook, like, let me template this out. But any consistency that you can create for a team, I think is really beneficial.
Yeah.
Especially at Target, where each of my leaders are a leader of a different category. So bottoms they do approach things differently than denim, but like whatever tool you can share to kind of take that guesswork out is great.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is development tools. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? How do you want to get there? What do you like? What do you look for in a leader? What do you hate about leaders? So it's just kind of creating that little source of truth for yourself.
That's great.
Yeah.
How much is your office thinking about sustainability or circular economy?
Yeah. So this is like, I'm not going to get corporate lingo on you, but on Target.com, you see the corporate side of things, and they have a really great, simple message on what we're doing about sustainability. It's called Target Forward. But essentially, it's huge in our minds because we want to use the powerhouse of Target, the scale and size, to do good. Like, let's make this world better. There's 3 big initiatives and ambitions that we have. One is design and elevate sustainable brands. So as I mentioned, within Target, you have your own brands. Men's is Goodfellow and Original Use. Women's, Wild Fable, Universal Thread, all these other great brands that you know. So it's ensuring that what we're doing in that whole process of designing and manufacturing, we're creating sustainable practices. And then when we work with national brands like Levi's and Hanes and Pair of Thieves and such, it's making sure that they are also, we're keeping them to the same level.
Standard,
thank you.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's innovate to eliminate waste. So throughout the manufacturing process, we've all seen it. It can be disgusting. So what does Target need to do to innovate on eliminating the waste that the fashion industry is known for. And last is my favorite. It's elevate and create more opportunities of equity and inclusion. So something that I'm passionate about as a woman leader, a woman diverse leader, how do we create opportunities for everybody? And how do we build that representation, not only in the offices, but how it shows up for the guest in the store? A lot of great initiatives going on there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Good. Glad to hear it, because if the behemoths like Target can make it work, then all the little guys can follow
I mean, we're
suit.
working on it.
Yeah. So as a class, at the first week of class, we developed 4 questions that we are asking
Yes.
every guest that comes through, our capstone questions for spring 2023. And the first is, what advice do you have for yourself as a new graduate? I know you've kind of answered
Yes,
this,
and I
but
feel like my Spanx is totally showing. Sorry. I think open-minded. You know, you have in your mind what you want it to be. There's nothing wrong with that, but just be flexible. I think it will be fine. Knowing in your head you'll be fine. You will be okay. Like this is an amazing school, an amazing education. It's incredibly reputable in this industry. You're going to be fine. Yeah. Don't be a turd because the industry is so small.
yeah, people will remember.
Yeah, they'll remember you.
And what do you feel like is the most important thing you learned on your first job?
Oh, God. This, not to blanket statement, but just corporate, how to operate in a corporation or a big company.
Yeah.
It's politics, it's pecking order, it's hierarchy, it's how do you communicate up, across, and down. You know, those are things that they kind of teach you and prepare for you in school, but then you're like in practice.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, I have to give a presentation. Like, it's all these things that you kind of build up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good point too, because I think you can be really great at your job,
Yes.
but not get recognized for it
Yeah.
and not get promoted for it. And
Yeah.
so part of, especially in a larger company, you know, not a startup, part of getting yourself moving is making sure people are aware of what you
Yes.
are doing.
Put yourself out there.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
funny.
not saying like brag about yourself all the
Yeah, yeah.
time and toot your own
We
horn, but
call
don't
it-
give away your credit.
We call it humble brags.
Yeah.
So, well, ideally, you have an amazing leader that recognizes your greatness and amplifies it. So, I am the leader of the men's division, but I have an incredible rock star team. So, anytime they do something, I amplify the crap out of it.
Yeah.
Like so and so did this. I want, you know, just recognition so they know beneath me there's all this brilliance and greatness, and then it helps with their career trajectory because they feel confident, and then they can humble brag on these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. What do you hate most about the fashion industry?
Oh gosh. I don't want to say hate. There's opportunities everywhere. I think the biggest one that I think is becoming better is just diversity and representation in this industry. I mean, progress has been made. We still got a lot to do, but I think it's getting better. And with disruptors, TikTok, all these things, clap, clap, everyone needs to get on board that
Yeah.
this is just a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
The second thing that we touched on is just sustainability, circular fashion, waste. It's almost like, how do these powerhouse brands come together and just like fix it, like
Yeah.
figure this out?
Yeah.
So that's 2 things that are like the biggest opportunities to me in fashion.
Yeah, that's great. A couple weeks ago, we had in someone who just joined the 15% pledge.
Yes.
Which I believe Target has signed,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
How's that going?
I can't speak to it specifically,
Yeah.
but to the sustainability.
Is it up to each divisional to make it yourselves compliant, or is it kind of a
It's
separate
like an
division?
enterprise-wide thing, but it's interesting because in order to create sustainability goals, you need to understand where you're starting from. So Target just published their huge ESG report on here's where we are starting from, and here's what we want to get to. I think it's by 2030. Go online, double check. And then backtrack that, and it's like, here's what we need to do in apparel, here's what we need to do in home and hard lines, essentials and beauty, food and beverage. So each pyramid is responsible, but that roadmap is pretty much, we need to define that still.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Well, beginning days.
Yeah.
And I don't know if maybe you feel like you just answered this in the last question, but what is the biggest macro trend in the fashion industry happening over the next 5 years?
Okay, I was thinking about this one. So when I was in school, believe it or not, the term omni-channel was not a thing. Like, if you think, like, Amazon didn't exist, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook didn't even exist. MySpace was maybe just getting started. Okay, so that was like 20-ish years ago. But I think the next 5 years is technology, whether it's AI, chat, whatever you,
Yeah.
There's going to be technological disruption to this industry, and I think it's going to be interesting on how do we balance this advancement and then human to
Optimize.
create brands, do assortments. I think that's something that's front of mind for me, and like how is this going to look?
Yeah.
And then because what we're noticing is, and I don't know if it came from the pandemic, but like the consumer and the guest is evolving faster than ever. And the way we work is kind of not evolving as fast. So like who's the next TikTok? Who's the next Snapchat? Clearly I'm not on these things. But it's once that's released or launched, like it's going to impact us again.
Yeah.
So let's get ahead of it.
Yeah.
And figure it out.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a unique answer, I think, from everyone else we've heard, so I like that one.
Oh God, do they usually say something like culottes? I don't know.
No. I mean, I think sustainability, too, being a big
Yeah.
issue. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think technology is going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's all for me.
Okay.
I'm sure there's a lot of questions out there, so I'll turn it over.
That's okay. Yeah.
I'll pass the mic.
I'm going to have some water because I have like paste mouth.
With your merchandising team, how much crossover there is with the design teams of Goodfellow and Original Use?
Oh, that's a good question. It's the same design team, but within the design team, there's designers focused on Goodfellow and then designers focused on Original Use. So we make sure that there's no crossover. So we want to make sure that the brand identity is so crisp that we have these guardrails, because on the floor pad, we have almost 2,000 stores. It's not going to execute the way we want it to perfectly. So if the guest is walking the floor pad and they see a hoodie in Goodfellow and a hoodie in Original Use, they're like, well, what's the difference? So we want to make sure that we're differentiating the assortment, but the design team have their focuses. And we share.
Okay.
Yeah, we make sure, like, throw up your tops, throw out your bottoms. I want to see all your stuff. And then we just kind of critically look at it to make sure that there's a true reason to be. That's a big thing that I'm telling my team.
And then how much communication is there with the merchandising team about design or interacting with the designers? Or like, what does a
Constant.
meeting like that look like?
Okay, so I'm going to walk you through, like, we call them cycles. So essentially that's season. So you have cycle 1, cycle 2, that's spring, summer, cycle 3, cycle 4, fall, holiday, or high winter. And we do a big kickoff with design. It's me sharing the merch strategy for that particular cycle and design coming in with their concept and trend. And we have an amazing meeting, and that kicks off that cycle. And then the teams work with the designers weekly. We have weekly, we call it CFT meetings, cross-functional team. And it's design, product operations, which is sourcing and development, and then merchants. So we're just like doing it. Yeah. So weekly. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Right. Being like
No.
being like the leader of a team, like what do you see as like your best characteristic that you can provide as a leader?
Oh, that's a good one. Honestly, I think being real. I think when you lead a team, you need to establish trust, because they trust you and then you trust them. And then when I'm real, I also want to make sure that they are 100% empowered. So I think that's kind of been my approach to leadership. It's authentic, I'm vulnerable, I'm real. I don't, what I say is what I mean. and I'm empowering. Like, go do your greatness and show me what's up. So I think that's helped with, team building and just making the team feel psychologically safe to fly and do amazing things.
Do you feel like this hybrid environment makes it so that you really have to lean on the trust even
Yes,
more?
100%. So one of the silver linings about COVID is that vulnerability real fast. So imagine you're in a meeting with the president, CEO, and their cat jumps up on their computer and he's like, oh, Mr. Bojangles. It's like, you see a side of these leaders that you typically don't see when you're in the office. So it really kind of rips that veil off and you're like, you're real, we're human. Your kid is having a meltdown. Your dog is being crazy. So I think that vulnerability has been helpful, but for sure trust, because you just have to trust it's blind trust almost sometimes in the beginning.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. That's a good question.
Other questions? While she's walking that back, a question I have too on working with the design team. Is there something about a designer that makes them particularly great to work with?
Yes. The design team at Target is phenomenal, and here's why. They are creative, innovative, and can see into the future, but they're incredibly pragmatic. Like, a successful designer in working in collaboration is they understand your guest. This is the Target guest. This is not Todd Snyder. This is not Gucci. This is not some design house. This is the Target guest. So taking the trend, taking the hot thing, and then developing it to be approachable and digestible for our target guests. To me, successful designer, and also the ability just to be very pragmatic. It's a creative process. We respect it, but at the end of the day, we can only buy into 7 different pant silhouettes. Pick your favorite.
Yeah.
So we can't do all the things, but they're incredibly pragmatic and analytical in understanding, well, these are my bets, and this is why, and then I'm like, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
So I want to ask, when you start your first job after graduating, what is the thing that you feel is most different from what you imagined when you were as a student?
Yeah, that's good. It was more fun. I had a blast my first job, and that's the other thing that I wanted to leave with you guys. Consider yourselves culture contributors, right? Have fun at work. Create your own vibe. You spend so much time at work, you may as well make it joyful. It was more fun than I anticipated. I realized quickly that I had to finesse my approach to email communication, presentation skills, and that used to give me a lot of anxiety, so I would prepare whatever I needed to do just to feel comfortable. If I knew I was going to speak in the meeting, I prepared not a maniac, but I made flashcards, just kind of like you would prepare for a test. It's the same approach, because it's fast-paced, quick, and you just kind of have to be able to kind of hang with that. That's what's different. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say that's one of those things that is really intimidating in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
Once you've been doing it, you don't
It's
you don't
fine.
have to study forever for presentation.
No, yeah.
Once you get to a certain point, it becomes a lot easier.
Yes.
But in those early days,
You're like, oh my
There's
God.
a-
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I was going to just note, one of the things, I would say one of the hardest parts about starting a new job and entering the industry is realizing that there's no summer vacation coming or Christmas vacation coming. Or
yeah,
big break.
yeah.
That's the one thing that you should take absolute advantage of now, especially if you have that spring
Yes.
vacancy. But
Take your PTO.
you can have fun every day at work if you make
Yeah.
your work people your friends.
And take your
So-
PTO. Literally take every single day off. Do not be a hero. You need it. Yeah.
Okay, hi.
Yeah. Hi.
You actually previously mentioned this before, about the collaborations Target does, and I know, at least with the women's lines, it's pretty successful since at least with the American designers, like Christopher John Rogers and stuff like that, they're like more successful than like, I don't know, like non-American designers. Have you guys in the men's department have considered like doing collaborations? Because honestly, like men kind of got taste now. So I was wondering if you guys would consider like,
so
I don't know, whether it's like looking at an upcoming like American designer or even like a J.W. Anderson, like has that ever come up or something?
Yes. Something will be launching. Okay. I'll say that. But 100%, you're right. The male guest is becoming, they're not adopting as fast, but they're adopting.
Yeah, like they care now.
Yes. And it's so, I don't want to say it's cute, but it is cool to witness. So working with the PR, and there's a whole separate team that works on that. So if you think of like Future Collective, we have that going. Then we have our LTOs with designers. Absolutely understanding there's an opportunity for men, especially in like up and coming design, more streetwear, like what have you. There's a ton of opportunity, and we're exploring.
Cool.
Great question.
Thank you.
Maybe soon.
Maybe soon. Yeah.
That's great.
That was good.
Actually, along those lines, Wash Fest's microphone.
Yeah.
I was wondering, how many of your doors do you have kind of signal out as more fashion locations?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't have the actual answer, but we do segment stores. We have our list of test stores. New York is, I believe, a big testing ground.
All of them?
Yeah, because right now we're doing a collaboration with Houston White, which is a black designer based in Minneapolis. So he has a presence in the Minneapolis stores. We put him in Florida, I think New Jersey. There is an approach, but that's actually handled by a completely different team. So we know the intent of like a specific collection, and then they're the ones that do the math and like, this is where it needs to go. Yeah. And then whether it's a slow rollout, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's massive.
Because on a lot of companies, it's on the buying team. to
Yep.
Kind of,
We tell you,
stores,
yep.
yeah.
We have our recommendation, and then they come in because we have so many different formats of targets. They're like, nope. We're like, cool. Like, what do you suggest? Yeah.
This is kind of a throwback question.
Ooh.
You mentioned at your first job that you really loved doing it. As a graduating senior myself, I have a weird like set time of how long I want to stay at my first job, just because
Oh, interesting.
there's so many things I want to try out.
Yeah.
How was it for you when you were leaving your first job? Like,
That's, gosh. I didn't have that in my head. I didn't have going in like, oh, I only want to be here X amount of years.
How long did you stay at your first job?
2 years, I think. I'm trying to this is like 500 years ago, apparently. I knew, it's interesting because the longest I've been at a company is 5 years, which is kind of not traditional for my generation to age me, where there's like lifers and people who are super loyal. I'm loyal to myself. Like, I want to make sure that I'm being challenged, I'm having fun, and I'm gaining experience that excites me. So I'm always open. I feel like in going back to like the open-mindedness, I think I encourage you to be open-minded on how long you stay at your job. Because you don't, like, here's what's up. You may get there and you're in role and you're like, I'm crushing it. And then they come to you, you're like, hey, cool, we have this cool opportunity at this current company. Would you be open? And, you know, that might plot twist your plan. So I think you need to kind of be open-minded. But I love that you think about it like get your IDP, think about your toolbox and like what experiences you want to gain along the way, or what companies that you aspire, and it'll work itself out.
I felt leaving that very first job was a little intimidating. It's kind of like jumping off a cliff.
Oh, 100%.
You go through school, you make these choices, you make your choice for college, which is a very specific choice, and you live with it for 2 to 4 years, depending. Yeah. But then you make this choice on a company, and when do you decide to go? When do you decide to stay? It's a very personal decision, and it's really hard
That's a
to
good-
know you're making
Yeah.
the right.
Here's what's up. you may not know, but if you find yourself bored, annoyed, disgruntled, burnt out, it's like it starts infringing on your personal balance. Get out.
Yeah.
Get out of there.
No more quiet quitting.
Yeah, no more. Yeah, no more quiet quitting. Because when I was at Victoria's Secret, I remember driving into work. This is so effed, but I was like, God, I am so tired. If I just could get sick and like be in the hospital for a month and sleep, and I'm like, that is so messed up. I'm like, time to look.
I have a very similar story.
Yeah.
I was on the way to work one spring day, like today, like a nice spring day, and I saw a homeless person lying
Yeah.
on the sidewalk and thought, I wish
That must be nice.
I
Yes.
could be outside all
Yes.
day today. And I was like, this is pathetic. Like,
No.
I gotta go do a job.
No, there's that moment. And then, if you are in a relationship or close to family, like my husband's like, you are becoming something that, like, something's up.
Maybe around.
Yeah. He's like, you need to do something. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's my career. No. What's more important is your mental health, the relationships you have in life. So just look for those signs. Yeah. Yeah. I hope that helped.
You did.
Okay.
Any more hits? Well, thank you so much
Thank you.
for being here.
Thank you for your time.
It was really a great
Aw, thank you.
I
I love that, like, my Spanx was probably out the entire recording.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're good. So we have 2 weeks in a row of some business leaders. So one thing I like to do at least once a semester is talk about the designer's dummy guide to reading sales reports. So we'll go over that after spring break. As the fact that most of you in the room are planning to be designers, no one is expecting you to create reports or make reports or manipulate them, but to be a strong designer and have a strong collaborative relationship and to expand, I think it's super important that you can actually read these reports and understand them. So I'm just going to take you through that in the next couple weeks.
That's really great.
But have an awesome spring break. It doesn't seem like you're running off, so if you have any one-on-one
Oh, yeah.
questions, Lisa's here.
Here till tomorrow morning.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
I also have lecture cups for everyone. What is it? Oh, yeah.
Do you know anyone in small funds?